6:36. Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to your friends. How are you? There's a lot of news going on. So I want to move away from the battle over illegal immigration and what is going on with El Salvador and moronic senators and move to the Trump administration and what I believe is a really interesting conversation and story relating to Harvard University. Now, I don't know if you've seen what's going on, but basically, this is the Trump administration versus Harvard. Need some audio, KGB. Now, we've all been watching as the wave of anti-Semitism has been going on college campuses across the country. They've been just plain violent. They've been playing out on college campuses across the country. And now it is getting real for one of America's biggest universities, Harvard University.
The Trump Justice Department and the administration has asked the Internal Revenue Service to revoke Harvard University's tax-exempt status. This comes after President Trump suggested that move on Truth Social earlier in this week, that Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status. The move could cost the Ivy League institution billions of dollars. The Trump administration has already halted more than $2 billion in federal grants to the university over what the White House says was a failure to address anti-Semitism on campus.
You know, it is fascinating because you have so many people, of course, once again, media and folks on the left, siding with the wrong side. Literally, Donald Trump is saying, this is crazy. Literally, Donald Trump is saying that you're not allowed to be anti-Semitic.
At Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals.
Remember that moment, that stunning moment when Congresswoman Elise Stefanik was questioning then Harvard President Claudina Gay about anti-Semitism on the campus of Harvard. And they simply would not admit that anti-Semitism was happening on the campus. They said it depended on the context. And calling for the genocide of Jews, they decided it depends on the context as to whether or not that is harassment and bullying or not. And so they just kept saying, and America was horrified that they just kept saying it's all about the context.
Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric.
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
Yeah, it was insane. So obviously, America was horrified by these answers. And so it was crazy because at the time and now, it just seemed like they didn't care that Jewish students, young adults, were being harassed and targeted at Harvard and all these other universities as well. I mean, think about what happened. I mean, let's specifically talk about Harvard. Jewish students were spat on. They were followed. They were harassed. They were prevented from going to class. They were blocked from accessing certain parts of the school, from walking through certain parts of the school. There are documented anti-Israel protests contributing to a hostile environment. Anti-Semitic posts on Harvard-based social media platforms and chats, that kept happening as well. And you had posters defaced with images of Hitler and phrases like F the Jews and the Jews did 9/11. And it goes on and on. That's what was going on at Harvard. And so you can understand why people like, for example, Elise Stefanik, they're horrified. And remember when this was going on, we were seeing all of this anti-Semitism on the college campuses across the country, and it was playing out in real time. I mean, you had students taking over entire buildings. They were taking over entire, quads or parts of the campus where Jewish students simply, they couldn't get from one class to another, or they had to walk all the way around the school. And still they wouldn't say that that was bullying and harassment. So the Trump administration said, you've got to stop this anti-Semitic stuff from happening. And incredibly, Harvard is refusing to protect their Jewish students.
When it comes to Harvard, the president's position on this is grounded in common sense, in the basic principle that Jewish American students, or students of any faith, should not be illegally harassed and targeted on our nation's college campuses. And we unfortunately saw that illegal discrimination take place on the campus of Harvard. There are countless examples to prove it, particularly with the stunning confession by then Harvard President Claudine Gay, who said that bullying and harassment depended on the context.
Yeah, that is Caroline Levitt. And she's spot on, of course. Why should Harvard, and I guess this is the question, why should Harvard get, number one, federal grants worth billions of dollars, and why should they continue to get tax-exempt status when all of this is going on? Because realizing when they have tax-exempt status, then ultimately they are able to utilize their money for this kind of behavior. The money that they would be saving through their tax-exempt status, then they are using that money for this kind of behavior. And so the Trump administration is like, we're not doing this anymore. We are not going to allow this kind of behavior to continue. And so Jewish Americans and all Americans are hoping to support this kind of behavior with our tax dollars. And basically the Trump administration is saying no more.
The president at that time made it clear to the American public he was not going to tolerate illegal harassment and anti-Semitism taking place in violations of federal law. So the president made it clear to Harvard, follow federal law, no longer break Title VI, which was passed by Congress to ensure no student can be discriminated against on the basis of race, and you will receive federal funding. Unfortunately, Harvard has not taken the president or the administration's demands seriously. All the president is asking, don't break federal law, and then you can have your federal funding. I think the president is also begging a good question. More than $2 billion out the door to Harvard when they have a more than $50 billion endowment. Why are the American taxpayers subsidizing a university that has billions of dollars in the bank already?
Yep.
And we certainly should not be funding a place where such grave anti-Semitism exists.
So how much does Harvard stand to lose if they do lose this tax-exempt status? We'll talk about that and a whole lot more straight ahead. It is 6:45 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Time to check the roads. A high of 78 and partly cloudy. Thanks for listening to Nashville's Morning News. And so talking about Harvard and the battle between Donald Trump, President Trump's administration, and Harvard because of their clear anti-Semitism. And now the president has come out and he is removing as much as he can. He's punishing Harvard as he should because of that anti-Semitism. The Trump administration came out and he basically said, yeah, if you want to continue to receive federal funding through grants, if you want to continue to enjoy your tax-exempt status, then you've got to stop all of the anti-Semitism. And literally, Harvard said, no, we're not going to stop this abhorrent behavior. And so Harvard gets $2 billion in these federal grants. And they also, of course, have all of these endowments as well. I mean, you've got tens of millions of dollars in endowments. And so these grants, just so you know, they are said to be used for research in science and medicine and such. So the government says, okay, your work could impact all Americans. So what we're going to do is we are going to give you some taxpayer dollars let's continue to also give you tax exempt status. See, that's how it works. The federal grants are for science and medical research because they are looking to, fight cancer and these kinds of things.
You want to hear something?
What's that?
Just breaking this morning.
Yes.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem threatening to strip Harvard University of its ability to enroll international students if it doesn't turn over records on international students' illegal and violent activities.
Well, you know why that is, right? It's because of that guy out of Colombia.
Right.
I forget his name now. It's not in front of me. But
Mahmoud Khalil.
Mahmoud Khalil. So, I mean, that's great to know, Joan, because I don't know what kind of activities he was engaged in at home. And I think he's from Syria, a Pakistani from Syria. But, I mean, it's clear that guy, anti-Semitic. And so the point that they're trying to do with Kristi Noem is, who are we letting into this country? And what are they going to do when they get here? Because if they're coming, as Marco Rubio said, if they're going to come into this country and they're going to lead protests against our ally Israel, if they're going to lead protests where there's vandalism, bullying, and all that stuff going on, then we're not going to let them in because we know that they're here to cause trouble. There are probably millions of perfectly qualified people from other countries that would love to come to this country and actually just study and do what they can to improve their own situation, as opposed to and get an education from an American college, as opposed to Mahmoud Khalil, who, it seems to me clearly, he just wanted to come over here and lead these anti-Semitic protests. So I love that they're doing that.
Turning the screws.
That's exactly right, Joan. Harvard has do you know how much Harvard has in endowments? $50 billion.
Why do they need taxpayer money anyway?
Well, they don't. In my opinion, they don't. These are, by the way, in case you folks don't know, endowments are basically donations made over the years, and the universities not only have the original billions donated, but also the investment returns. So it's a pretty good deal. And so just like NPR, the likes of Harvard, they don't need our taxpayer dollars. They certainly don't. I love, though, because you've got all of these people on the left that are, again, where we started this monologue, they are picking the wrong side. They are picking Harvard.
For some weeks now, the administration has been trying to magify higher education by imposing demands on private universities. And yesterday, Harvard became the first university to refuse to comply with the administration's requirements. Boom!
What's crazy, all these lemmings are applauding. They have absolutely no idea. I guarantee you, these folks have no idea what they're actually applauding. That, by the way, in case you don't know, is Stephen Colbert.
The Trump administration also wanted Harvard to conduct plagiarism checks on all current and prospective faculty members and to report foreign students who commit conduct violations immediately to federal authorities. Oh, great.
It's just Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard, she had to step down because of plagiarism. It is amazing the lack of context that Colbert and some of these folks give or don't give regarding the anti-Semitism. And again, this audience and the left, they eat it up. And he's pretty much, Colbert is clearly turned into basically like The View. But moving on from all of that, Alan Dershowitz, he was on Newsmax, and he talks about how, you know what, there will probably be some sort of a deal struck between Harvard and the Trump administration.
We will see, hopefully, a negotiation. Otherwise, I don't want to see the losers be research on cancer and other kinds of research that are funded by the federal government. We need a resolution here, and I think a resolution is possible. But Harvard has to be willing to make changes because the current status quo is just not fair to conservative students, to Jewish students, to many American patriotic students, to Zionist students. It's just not fair. And people feel that they're not safe, intellectually safe, emotionally safe, even physically safe.
So I believe the point is that, nobody wants, and this is what Dershowitz is saying, Nobody wants to see research take a hit. But the point is they do have all of those endowments. They can pay for their own research. And by the way, Harvard and the like, they don't do the research for the money, if you will. They do it for the prestige. Now, what is the President Trump, what is his administration actually demanding of Harvard? Because remember, Colbert and the audience, they were ecstatic that Harvard was fighting back. So what exactly is in the legislation or the demands of President Trump? Governance and leadership reforms. Right now, the university is more focused, they say, on activism than education. That does seem to check out. They want to go back to merit-based hiring and admissions. Okay, why would they not do that? Of course, if you're a conservative, you like things that are merit-based. They want plagiarism enforcement. Of course, I just explained to you what happened with Claudine Gay. Trump wants international students screened. This goes with what Joan was saying. Trump wants international students screened for anti-American sentiment and values. They want elimination of DEI. They want protest restrictions. Protesters should not be allowed to wear masks so that when students are beat up or harassed, they can be identified. They can identify the students that are doing it. They want I don't know how you do this one. They want diversity audits. They want to know if the various departments have diverse viewpoints. You're talking about students and teachers and teachers' aides and all that kind of stuff. They do want the universities to cooperate with federal authorities to make sure all of these things are being followed. And again, as I've been reporting, Harvard said that they would not abide. Now, by the way, if you add up all the property taxes, the operational taxes, the endowment income taxes, and the rest of the taxes, if Trump actually does take away their tax-exempt status, Harvard could have to pay about $3.5 to $4 billion annually in taxes if Donald Trump is able to take away that tax-exempt status. So we'll see how that all plays out. It is 6:54 on Nashville's Morning News, and Joan Jones has the news coming up at 7. Joan.
The Trump administration facing possible contempt charges, and why the Reverend Al Sharpton said, sure, I'll agree to meet with Target retailer over its DEI practices. Those stories coming up here at 7 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.